Storytelling evokes all of your senses.
If you want to succeed, you want to be able to...
Today, we're going to talk about the art of storytelling.
Or 90% of our work was really creating these slides.
Storytelling is...
I really struggled to build a structure.
Storytelling.
And that's actually the easy part. Putting all the knowledge that I've learned or creating a framework.
What is storytelling with charts when done effectively? Now today, we're going to dive into storytelling with charts and a little something called the Lindy effect. Now, you should know about Sam that he's advised executives from Fortune 500 companies to startups, entrepreneurs. He's worked with large and medium organizations and has also advised governments and nonprofits on a matter of strategy and general management. All right, let's hack into today's topic. Sam, how you doing?
Good, Philip. How are you today?
I'm doing good, feeling good. I'm actually pretty stoked to learn more about this with you, especially because storytelling with charts happens to be one of your specialties. So if you could, I'd love for you to sort of break down a general synopsis of how you view storytelling with charts, because in a day and age like today, where everybody has decks, especially when raising capital, or just in general, the workday for most people involves being a part of some sort of data set, this is going to be crucial for them to learn about. So in your own words, what is storytelling with charts when done effectively?
Storytelling with charts is actually the term was invented by myself and I trademarked. So it's really a term that's used to describe the process or the framework that is typically used. However, fundamentals behind storytelling with charts is a very old concept. And it was invented by, to begin with, management consultants. In the past, Booz Allen Hamilton or McKinsey, some of the oldest consulting firms, or BCG, Bain, the largest consulting firms, they used that on a day-to-day basis. The outcome of their work is usually put in a form or a shape that is actually in the form of storytelling and in the form of charts. So they usually produce what we call decks. Decks are usually 100+ page reports. I came from a corporate background. I was used to just creating a slide or two, maybe short presentations. And I used to cram a lot of stuff into my slides. I didn't have any structure to it. I really struggled to build a structure in my presentations, even though I worked for 4 or 5 years. And I was taught how to present. I worked for General Electric at the time. They had a very good school. They taught you how to present to executives, how to conduct a presentation, like how to stand in front of charts. But the content of the charts was never taught. So when I moved and I did my MBA at Columbia, after I graduated and I started working, I joined McKinsey at the time. The first thing we had to do is create these decks, right? And my first assignment, I walk into my job manager's office and he pulls out a deck, like a 200, 300 page deck, slams it on his desk and tells me,
"Sam, take this deck, study it. We have a new client. We need to deliver something very similar to this within the next 4 weeks."
That was, to me, was shocking, because I actually thought that working in consulting implies that we have to roll up our sleeves and go dive deep into the business operations and maybe do some work. But it turns out that 80 or 90% of our work was really creating these slides, the same type of slides that my job managers showed it to me. Throughout my career in consulting, if you want to succeed in consulting, you want to be able to write these, craft these decks. There's an art and science to doing that. It was no easy feat to master the skill. Usually doing that requires 2 to 3 years to learn it, and you actually keep mastering it until you reach principal level or partner level in management consulting or strategy consulting. That's when you really master the art of storytelling with charts. That's when you can craft the best charts, because your job becomes reviewing the work of your subordinates, but still they will never produce. The team that is less junior than principal are never able to craft the story or the final deck that is really client ready, right? It's only the people that the principal and partner level people that are able to take that, whatever the junior staff provides, and take it to the next level, right? Recently, the book called Storytelling with Charts that I published 2 years ago was kind of like putting all the knowledge that I've learned or creating a framework around it. The main problem was in my career as a management consultant that I had to learn by a brute force. We called it brute force
just learn it.
There were some courses, there are some books out there that talk about how you can do a single visual, like how you can take a certain data or something you want to show, and how to put a chart with a header on it in order to present it in a very compelling manner. And that's actually the easy part, creating or taking a bunch of data and putting it in one slide and having one message. This is the easiest thing you can do. And today, actually, there are tools, plugins into PowerPoint like the one we've developed, STC AI, that you can find on StoryTellingWithCharts.com that can actually create the nice, clean visual for you, as long as you know what you want to show. The difficulty becomes when you're trying to build the entire story. And that's where I thought there should be actually a process or a framework to help not only newcomers into consulting, but any industry. Anyone who is looking to build a presentation, build it in a way that really tells a story. And this process shouldn't be just exclusive to consultants, because it's funny that consultants are paid like $1,000 an hour or maybe $1,500 an hour to create decks. It's something that's exclusive. Sometimes consultants are hired to have these decks as opposed to really doing the actual work. Obviously, these decks come from the result of the work that the consultants do. But many times I've certainly been hired to do storytelling, to take some existing data or work that has been done and create a story out of it. This is way too expensive, and it should be something that everybody should master. And you don't have to always retain consultants at $1,000 an hour to help you do that. That's why I created this book, to make it available for people. As long as you understand this framework, I think after that it's actually practice. The idea is that you can read the book in 2 to 3 hours and your skills go up exponentially. So the idea is to get your skills from a level of not knowing what this concept is and not knowing where to start if you're doing a presentation to, oh, okay, this is how it goes. Now I know at least you have a framework, and within that framework, it becomes so easy to create the story. It's not always just for business problems. It can be for anything. You could be pitching, you could be doing sales, you could be pitching an idea. It could, even my 13-year-old daughter today for her classwork, she applies the framework. So you can apply it anywhere. To sum it all up, the idea is that this framework came originally from management consultants. They mastered the art of doing or pitching or providing these decks that usually companies pay $1 million to receive. This is not a small thing, but the framework is simple. The way I created it is simple to understand and digest, and it's really durable. It's probably here to stay and last.
That was one of the things I found fascinating about your work with storytelling with charts. Predominantly, number one, that no one had really encapsulated all of this in one framework to begin with until you wrote this. When you read this, as I've been doing, you come to immediately understand it's immediately accessible. And more importantly, I can't believe nobody ever systematized this. It's like you said, they focused on so many other factors that completely missed the mark on how to make someone effective, useful immediately. And so the learning curve is insane for doing this. And yet they've been doing this for years, for decades even, conceptually, these concepts. And yet the amount of time it took you, the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into mastering this technique, and like many master consultants do over years, and yet you had the foresight to see that this was going to be effective. I'm actually personally curious to know, at what point did you make that decision that you were going to put this together into a cohesive element, which is the book you have available now?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you asked that, because I used to work in consulting, then I quit, I went entrepreneurial. I also worked on private equity and worked in venture capital. There is no time in my career, whatever I did, that I didn't have to create presentations. And I found myself applying these concepts. Now I do strategy consulting again. But having said that, I noticed that the concept itself was invented in the 70s. There's this rule, the Lindy effect. It's something that I came across it when I read Anti-Fragile from Steve Talib, and he gets into detail of that. And it was also mentioned by Benoit Mandelbrot, also who brought it up in his book, where he talks about fractals. And the idea of the Lindy effect is when things age in reverse. For example, the Bible. The Bible survived for 2,000 years, maybe longer. It is likely to survive another 2,000 years. So the idea is that lifespan increases with time if it ages. Not everything. For example, your phone is something that will not age with time. But the music on your phone that you listen to, that music, if you listen to classical music, if you listen to Mozart, which are 400 years old, this music is going to be there in 400 years to come. That's the concept of Lindy effect. The same concept really applies to the storytelling with charts. I mean, storytelling with charts isn't new as a concept. As a framework, well, it's been put together just by me, right? There's no such framework in the exact detailed matter that I've provided in the book. There are tools out there are similar books. There is the Pyramid Principle, the book that was introduced by a BCG ex-partner, similar to that talks about a little bit of that, but doesn't really go into, it's a bit more technical. It's not really practical to take it and really apply it for anyone. Storytelling with charts was written for anyone to apply. And I think what's important about the concept itself is that it started in the 60s. If you want to go even back, when consulting started. But when consulting started, they may not have created like story decks and developed them to that effect that they did in the 60s and 70s. So it really started in the 70s, I would say, or maybe late 60s. That concept continued well until today. So today, they still use that same concept. Of course, the graphics are now much nicer. They became creative. They use a lot of icons. They use different colors. They use landscape mode as opposed to the square mode they used to use, or in the past they used to do it all by hand. Now they have computers and PowerPoints and keynotes and Tableau and all sorts of tools, but they still do the same thing. If you want to be effective, of course, you apply the same concept, which is storytelling with charts. And I don't think that's going to go away. So if you look at it, it's a concept that survived 40 years. It's going to probably survive for another 40. Actually, we're working on an AI tool right now that can help you implement the framework, so it may expedite stuff for you. It will still be there. It will still be effective in the way you present stories, in the way you present your ideas, in the way you pitch, in the way you discuss topics, or in the way you want to tell a story. That's the power of storytelling with charts and the framework behind it.
Yeah, I mean, just to have a visual of people used to hand make 300-page presentations, and where we are now using the same concepts. And now we have all this new technology that really brings home the idea of aging in reverse, where, wow, that same thing is being done again, but different and new. And now you yourself are part of that Lindy effect, in a sense, creating a tool that's going to help take that very framework that you've designed here and making it even more applicable to people's work today. That's got to be good feeling to be on the cutting edge of emerging technology and being able to be part of that tradition of helping this age in reverse. Before we close out, is there anything else you'd like to share as we begin to close this discussion down on storytelling with charts, the Lindy effect, or even your career?
Well, just funny that you mentioned that. I mean, I used to be told stories by my partners, my senior partners, back when I started. Stories that they had the visual departments, hundreds of people working, just creating charts by hand, drawing charts by hand back in the days. Imagine that. And all of those jobs became obsolete overnight, right? When Word was introduced. So suddenly they went from drawing by hand into a computer software that would do that stuff. They used to use a typewriter and Tipex to remove stuff, all that kind of stuff. All of that's gone. Today, the introduction of AI is probably make a lot of jobs, make the life easier for consultants in terms of creating these charts. I mean, it may take away some of the jobs. Like if you have a visual department, I can see how AI can be introduced that can replace these jobs as well. But the concept is going to stay the same. Storytelling is here to stay. The actual tools that are going to be introduced to make this happen, that's what's going to be advanced, and that's what's going to make life even better. I think the advantage that people have is that with the existing of simple chat GPTs and the Claudes and all these LLM models that are out there, they can help craft or help structure and accelerate the learning, so that the stuff that used to be very difficult to master, the stuff that only the partners could master. I think anybody can look for ideas from AI to help structure, for example, presentations, come up with a storyline for a presentation, or come up for a pitch or an entire story. Right now, you have to manually take it and put it into slides, or you can use some of the tools that do that for you, but they're not as good. You still have to create the charts and you still have to fill in the blanks. But I think a big chunk of the work has been improved in a way that allows anybody to pick it up. Of course, you need to understand the framework. If you don't understand the framework and how it works, you can't use AI to do it. So that's why I do recommend for anyone, the book is very cheap. So I do recommend for people to pick up the book or even go to our website and download some of these, the free tools that we have available for them and use those tools with the help of AI to improve the way they pitch and the way they communicate.
Yeah, and specifically for the topic we were discussing in this episode in particular, there's a whole separate resource with StoryTellingWithCharts.com that'll help you get more in depth. Not only will the book be available there, but like subscribing there will help you go down that journey together as you stay in touch with someone who's leading the way on ensuring that these tools have the consultant in mind and how they can leverage this using the Storytelling with Charts framework, but also just with all the experience that Sam's had, he's building this for you, and that's going to be the whole difference, and keeping you abreast of the journey that's going on there as things develop, new tools come along the way that can join that fray. But with that said, that does do it for our discussion today in full. Thank you so much for stopping by.